What's up, motherfuckers? I'm playing in Sestao in Bilbao, open tournament. The other day I analyzed the first round, and today I'm going to share the second round. I won against a Argentine player, Ivan Pesudo, a 21 rating player. And in this game I go with the white pieces, and I watched that my opponent plays Caropirc, so I prepared that, and he entered in the preparation. So okay, e4, g6, b4, bishop d7, knight c3, c6. This is the Caropir. First fianchetto the king's bishop, and then c6 with the idea of d5. Another move order was c6, d4, d5, maybe knight c3, g6. But okay, that's simply different moves order. d6, d4, bishop d7, knight c3, c6. And here there are many ways to play with the white pieces. Like you can watch in the base, like knight f3 was the principal move, f4 was typical, bishop e3, bishop c4. There are many ways, but I choose h3. I really like this move because you are you're avoiding the bishop to go to g4 in some lines. Because, for example, if you develop so fast the knight to f3, this type of lines, the bishop can go to g4 maybe, and you are simply moving upon a useful move, not defining where the bishop are going to go, or you are helping the move g4 in one moment. And the idea is that after d5, that's what happened in the game, e5, and now white have a very good position because the typical plan of black here was knight h6, and here white can play with d4, covering the f5 square, and after f6, f4, uh, taking all the space in the center, and white is better here. Black have, if for example black plays like f6, then you go with f4, and in one moment the knight will go to h6, and then you play g4. And after that, for example, knight f3, queen e2 are always useful moves. And if black plays with, for example, h5, here bishop d3 is a good move. And simply develop normal the pieces. Knight h6, knight f3, bishop f5, castle. Yeah, a normal play. Okay, here my opponent chose e6. So normally in the Caropir you didn't like to play e6 because you want to develop the bishop to f5 or to g4. So now you are closing your light square bishop. And this pawn chain was fine with the pawn on g7 and the bishop on f8, with the idea of play c5, like in the French advanced variation, but here I really like white. And the move that I prepared here was h4. Ambidextrous move twice the h pawn in the opening, first to h3 in the fourth move, and 2 moves later move to h4, but now the position has changed a lot. First we want the pawn on h3 to cover the g4 square for the bishop, but now the bishop is close, so now the move was h4 with the idea of h5. That's the typical plan here, advance h5. Black develops normal knights, simply h5 was the best move. And the move that I prepared was c5, but here we have knight d5, pawn takes knight d6, king f8, queen f3, queen c7, and queen a3. The discover check, and knight a7, maybe f4, defending e5, and now we're going to follow with h5, h4, h4, h6, sorry, h5, h6, sorry. Okay, my opponent didn't want to allow me to play h5, so he played h5. And now I chose an incorrect plan. I play knight h3 with the idea of place the knight on g5. Maybe in some lines can go to f4, but the principal idea was play knight h5, knight g5. But the machine doesn't like this plan so much. The machine prefers to place the bishop on g5. For example, bishop d3 and bishop g5 are possible, but the favorite move was knight f3 here. And now the plan was bishop d5. Well, here black is attacking the b2 pawn, so there will be one. And now the plan was place the bishop on d3, knight e2, c3, before taking space in the queen side, but my plan of place the knight on g5 wasn't the best. But after that, that's the only bad move that I play in all the game. After knight h3 inaccurate move, then I play all the best move from the rest of the game. Knight h3, he came with knight e7, and here I start to think, and finally I decide to place the bishop on this on d3 to take the knight if he goes to f5. If he plays knight f5, simply takes. And here during the game, I suppose that this benefits me. This changing the structure, keep the both dark square bishop to passive, and the knight on f5 was the only thing that black had, and I traded. And the magic gave me the reason. Here says decisive advantage, so, or close to decisive advantage for white. So okay, for that reason I play bishop d3, so to take on f5, if he plays at f5, he came with queen b6 first. He played knight g5, which is a good move. Knight e2 was another option. But I don't like this type of things. C5, c3, knight c6, bishop e3, bishop d7. That's the typical development of the advanced French advanced variation, but with the bishop on effect, of course. But I didn't want to allow all her development in the queen side, so I prefer to keep the knight on c3 to against c5 play knight b5. With the reason I didn't play knight e2 too early. So here I decided to place the knight on e5, which is fine. Okay, he cannot take on d4. That's the trick because knight takes f7, king takes, and bishop d6 takes, and queen d4. So that's the idea of knight g5. And here my opponent play knight f5, which is a mistake because I simply take, and with this structure is quite clear advantage, decisive, say the machine. Because the both bishops are too passive and I have very good squares for the knight on f4 and on g5. And I have a plan to pass the rook via a3 like I made in the game. So now I have a winning position, and after that moment I start to play so well, and I play all the good moves, and I place all the pieces in the correct square, and I won in 12 more moves. Okay, first castle. I realized that the rook is not going to make nothing on h3, and I prefer to simply place the rook on e1. I think that the king is going to be safe on g1, because I was thinking about a4 first, but maybe the queen can be placed on a6 and cover the f1 square, avoid my castle, so I prefer to castle first. Castle, and now I was thinking about a4 because always was good one space in the sides. But I was thinking about is that two moves benefits me or not, because now I haven't the b5 square, and yes, my opponent has the b4 square. But I realized that I have a plan passing the rook via a3 to g3, so I really like to play e4 to pass the rook. Okay, now I know where I want all my pieces, because I know that I want my knight on f4, the a1 rook on g3, but I prefer to play first rook e1. I, I simply want to make that first, because I suppose that my opponent is going to play rook f8. Now here the rook didn't defend the f7 pawn, so in one moment can be a one target. So I really I prefer to play rook e1 first, rook e8, and now I start my plan. Knight e2, improving this knight. This knight have no good jumps here. So the good square for the knight was f4, so I go with my knight to f4. Good recruitment, 92, 97, knight f4. Now this knight here is so active. Now I'm threatening sacrifice on f7 and g6, next 5. He cannot play c5 because I attacked the d5 pawn. I threatening e6. This knight is so well placed on f4. Okay, my opponent plays too many normal moves, and you cannot make many normal moves, especially with black. It's always you should make something special. Because if you always play normal moves, it's difficult to play only normal moves, especially with black. knight f8, and now I came with my opponent didn't expect that move. My the the main goal of my plan was rook a3, passing the last piece to attack because all my pieces except of the a1 rook was very well placed. The knight on g5 is incredible. The knight on f4 is half, I told you before, have a very good square. The bishop on c1 is perfectly placed because he's attacking the king side from the first rank. I don't need the bishop on d2 or on e3. Here is perfect on c1 attacking the king side. The queen is attacking the king side too. The rook is here in an open file, prepared to push if e6 if one moment is needed or something. And the only piece that is not isn't in the attack was the rook on a1. So I play rook a3 with the idea of playing rook g3. 96, 96 is well losing, but the black position is totally hopeless. I think that white is winning here. 96, and now I take with the g knight. Why I take with this knight? Because after here, the knight on g5 is, if for example my plan was place the rook on g3 and the knight is in the same file of the rook, so the knight on g5 now is not making especially nothing. For the reason was better take with the g knight after bishop take rook g3, and now white is threatening knight takes h5, g takes h5, and bishop h6. So this is why I take with the g knight, because the knight on f4 was more strong because he's attacking the h5 pawn. So rook g3, and now I'm completely winning. My threat was simply take on h5 and bishop h6. He cannot move here the king because he can simply take, and the queen is coming, and his queen is so far from his king. His rook is so far from his king. This bishop is not defending. The rook is not defending. He only has this bishop here, but this is not enough to defend a king against 4 pieces attack. So he plays king f8, trying to leave the danger zone, but I simply can sacrifice here. Pawn takes, queen takes. Now I'm threatening rook g7, for example. If he takes here, rook g7, king takes, that's my threat, and this is checkmate. For example, king here, bishop g5, bishop f6, followed by queen h8, and checkmate. King here, queen g5 and queen g7. So that's my principal threat. Here I calculate a line f4, bishop takes f4, queen here. Here I watch bishop e3. Yes, followed by rook takes d7 and what checkmate too. So he give me the bishop, king e7, completely winning. I simply take the bishop. Another threat to show more things can be queen h7 and trapping the bishop. So okay, he goes to king e7. I simply take here, queen takes, and I was this tactic before, bishop d5, king d7, rook f7, and here my opponent resigned. He cannot take here because queen takes, and now the rook is falling. And if he goes, I have many moves. Maybe rook a5, rook f6, everywhere, every place that they move the rook are simply, yeah. Here all the moves are completely winning. C3, every move here are completely winning. I don't know. Maybe I go rook something. Maybe rook d7 or something, attacking the rook and completely winning. So here my opponent resigned. I really like this game. My only mistake was knight h3. That's a bad plan because I want my plan first was place the knight on g5, but I should place the knight on f3, the bishop on g5, and the bishop on d3. First rook b1, but the bishop on d3, knight e2, c3, knight f4, and typical plan. But after knight h3 mistake, there I really like the rest of moves. Knight e7, bishop d3. Yes, I'm preparing, anticipating his move knight f5. Here knight d5, and again anticipating queen takes d4 with the tactic take on f7 and bishop d5. And yes, a good trade, bishop takes f5, changing the structure, and I came with a Suhar plan, putting all the pieces into attack castle, rook e4 to prepare the penetration of the rook via e3, g3, rook e1 late. I place well the knight, I place well the rook, and when you place well all the pieces, then the tactics appear in the positions of here. After I place well all the pieces, it takes 9 takes addition. It's 8 5. It takes queen h5, king e3, and with queen to follow the tournament. Now I have, after that round, I have 2 points of 2. And the following round, I play against International Master of Bulgaria, so I'm going to comment the game in another video and try to follow as fast as possible. I hope you like the game and enjoy, so see you in the next video. Bye.